Okay, hello everybody. We're going to start in a few seconds. Can we please have some house? We are asking that if teachers can please make sure that learners' mics are muted and their cameras are switched off. If learners are obviously joining on their own devices, please make sure that you are monitoring that they are not switching on their cameras and muting. Remember, this is for the benefit of all the grade 12 learners in the Johannesburg region, so we expect full cooperation from everybody. All questions will be answered at school level for now. We will take the registers from the schools as attendance registers, but we will also take register of the Teams Microsoft. So you do not have to fill in any register right now. We will download it on Teams as well, but all schools should make sure that the registers are taken in class, attendance registers, which each subject advisor will come and collect, or you will give a copy to, as well as photos of learners in attendance. Okay, once we are now done with the house rules, I'd like to start. Welcome everybody to the English Home Language Learner Roadshow Edition, Johannesburg Region 2024 for Paper 1 today. We'd like to say thank you to every school and every learner for joining today. And we are very privileged to be here to be able to share this knowledge with you, especially before the most important exams that you are facing, which is your English Home Language Paper 1, which is in a few days' time, and also your prelims and final exams. I'd like to introduce my colleagues that are with me today. I have Mrs. Dimakatso Mbata from Johannesburg Central. I have Mrs. Ayanda Khadebe from Johannesburg East, Michelle Haynes from Johannesburg North, Mr. Sean Prince from Johannesburg South, and myself, Fatima Magda from Johannesburg West. Welcome everybody, and we're going to get started. So, when we talk about skills to be reinforced in this particular paper, we are going to be reinforcing the skills for paper 1, which is your comprehension, your summary, your advert, your cartoon, and obviously textual editing. This paper makes up 70 marks, and it's an application paper, which means it's a practice paper. And the person whose mic is on, please switch off. When we talk about paper 1 comprehension, I'm now going to hand over to Mrs. Mbata, Rebecca, to take over for paper 1 comprehension. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Fatima. Can you hear me? Fatima, am I audible?
Rebecca, sorry. Rebecca, can I just stop you for a second, please?
Okay.
I'd like to, sorry, ladies and gents, I have just been informed that our Chief Director has also joined us in this meeting. Mr. Makwagwa, Dennis, if you would love to say a few words, we would love you to actually take the stand and to say a few words to our colleagues, please, and our learners of Johannesburg region. Sir, if you're available, we'd like you to say a few words to the learners of Johannesburg region. In the absence of Mr. Magwagwa, could I ask Mrs. Naidu to, Jenny, she's also the Johannesburg region facilitator overlooking English Home Language, to say a few words.
Fatima, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the colleagues in the Johannesburg region. And we wish you a very fruitful engagement. And we know 100% in English Home Language is possible. So thank you so much for joining, and I hand over to you.
Fatima, can I carry on? Hello?
Hello?
Hi, Rebecca, you are free to take over and
Okay.
start.
All right, thank you very much. Colleagues, good afternoon and good afternoon to the learners. May I
Join. Guess so. Waiting for you. Oh yeah, you need to have the app. What's the app?
I think that Rebecca has been muted. Ladies and gents, can we please ask you to please not fiddle and please give us an opportunity to do this for you? Rebecca, I think someone muted
Okay,
you,
I
but you
just
can take
unmuted.
over.
Yes,
Thank you so
I
much.
just
You may take
unmuted.
over.
All right. Colleagues, we are going to start with comprehension, and I would really like for the virtual meeting etiquette to be observed, colleagues. We've been doing this for a while now, since the COVID, and we know the first thing we check is the mics are off and our cameras are off. With that said, welcome, and welcome to all the learners in the Johannesburg Central. We'll start off with comprehension. Remember, we're doing paper 1, and comprehension of the entire paper, which is 70 marks, carries 30 marks, and that is a lot of weight on the comprehension. And comprehension is actually testing us whether we are able to read for meaning, right? So these are the things you need to be mindful of. Instructional verbs. They are sometimes referred to as question verbs, and it is when we are answering the question with precision that we would have understood those instructional verbs. So it is important that learners familiarize themselves with instructional verbs, because they are the key to doing well in this paper, because they are linked directly with mark allocation, where you are asked to critically comment and where you are asked to explain. Those action verbs carry different mark allocation. So use them to judge how much you need to say, because when you are critically commenting is different from when you are just commenting. And something was mentioned the other day, that which is true, that when you are asked to comment, that response is not on the text. You would have then processed the information that is on the text for you to be able to elicit a comment, or for you to be able to give a comment. So that is how the text has impacted on you. So please go through and know the meanings of your action verbs. And I'm sure all the teachers have given you that, right? And in the comprehension paper, these are, for question 1, the words that are likely to come out there. Diction. And when you're asked to comment on diction, know that you can never get full marks unless you quote the word, because diction means a choice of words. Therefore, you cannot just comment that the diction is emotional or is emotive. You have to then give an example of that emotive word. So every time you see diction, know that you have to lift and use those quotation marks to say, this is what I'm saying about the diction, and this is the proof I get from the text, whether it's in paper 2 or in paper 1. It is important to support with quote. And when you're asked about the style of the writer, now this is how the writer chooses to write. Impacts on diction, again, the language used, the tone that is used, all those become important for you to be familiar with, for you to be able to make a comprehensive understanding of the text. Look at the introduction of the text. After you've looked at the headline, the heading will probably give something away. However, you look at the introduction, you skim through the text and look at the conclusion. Those two together should tell you what is the approach of the writer on this particular title or on this particular topic. All right. There's also imagery, that is the use of figurative expressions and language to create images or to put a point across. So know your figures of speech to be able to identify imagery, because imagery is created through the use of figures of speech, right? And those are examples of the imagery that sometimes is focused on paradoxical statements that, you find a statement that sounds like it is absurd, but when you look at it, it actually is making sense. When somebody says, death, thou shalt die, that seems absurd. It's a paradox. However, when people die, death dies because death can't kill you the second time. So look at those figurative expressions and know your figures of speech. You need to make direct reference to that when you respond to the question. Next slide, Fatima. Fatima, can we move the slides? Fatima, are you here? You have muted.
Hi, I'm here. Sorry, someone
Please
muted
move
me.
the slide.
I did.
No, it hasn't moved on my side.
Okay, I'm at the general section. Sorry, learners, please do not be taking the slides off. We're feeling that can we just please not take control of the situation? Rebecca, just give me a second. Learners have just taken control and I need to reload for us, please.
Good afternoon, colleagues.
Good afternoon, sir.
My name is Dennis Makwakwa.
Welcome, sir.
Yes, I was just
Welcome.
indicating my attendance to this program, but I see on the slides, I'm seeing half the slides. I'm not sure whether I'm the only one or what.
Sorry, sir, someone had taken control of it and we're just
okay.
re-uploading. Our learners have
Okay.
taken control of it, so we're just re-uploading.
Okay, thank you. And maybe we can mute everybody else who's not talking so that we don't get disturbed when we're
Yes,
busy
sir.
presenting. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Thank you so much. Rebecca, have you noticed that we are in general comments? Can you see it? Rebecca?
I was muted for a while there.
Okay, sorry, I have muted everybody. We're on general comments. Can you see that?
Oh, yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Ladies and gents, please can we not take control of the presentation? This is only for your benefit. So if you can just bear with us so that we can get through the presentation, and it is for your benefit only.
Okay. Thank you again, Fatima. And just an appeal to our learners as well. Please just pay attention and not fiddle with the electronics or with the presentation or anything. That will be highly appreciated. Somebody's mic is on. All right. As we started already, and the general comment is, this paper has 3 sections, 5 questions, right? So candidates know that you can start with any section because you know which one is your best section and you want to maximize that opportunity and score marks there while you have the time. So start with your best section as long as you number it correctly. Number it correctly and start with whichever one. And
So while Rebecca has just gone off a bit, let me talk about the fact that, like she says, what is your best section? So decide which section that you want to actually start with. It does not matter which section you want to start with. Secondly,
can you hear me, Fatima?
Yes, I can. You can take over.
Yes. Somebody removed me from the meeting. I don't know. All right. Complete it in the order that it suits you. Look at the mark allocation. Again, somebody removed the presentation. It's gone.
Guys, please, you need to, ladies and gents, can we please not be doing this? Educators, please take control of your learners in your class. It really is, we've asked you to please.
Hi, ma'am. Sorry to disturb you. There is a way that you can actually.
Yeah, I'm going to do it now. I'm going to
Yeah.
mute everybody. Yeah, I'm going to do that now.
Okay, while Fatima is
Yeah, you can
reloading,
carry on. Yeah,
yeah, but the presentation is not showing, right?
yes.
However, I was saying while Fatima is loading, we then choose only to start with the section that is our strong point. I want to access the presentation in another way on my phone. Fatima, are you able to load the presentation?
Yeah, it's already on.
It's not on my side.
Okay, can I carry on from you? It's on my side.
Okay,
Can you see it?
not yet.
Okay, so we're talking about complete the assessments in the order that suits you. Make sure that the mark allocation, what does the mark allocation mean? So when it says 2 marks, ladies and gents, remember you need to give 2 points, not just 1 word or 1 half a word. How have I done enough mark covered? How have I done enough to cover the mark allocation? So in terms of a 3-mark question, have you given 2 points and have you actually extended on one of the points to get that 3rd mark? So this is what we're going to go in terms of the comprehension. Look at each question and see what is being assessed in the question, and also what jargon is linked to these skills. What is it asking me? Is it asking me to comment? Is it asking me to identify? What is it doing? So those words, those direction words that we have been drilling in you from grade 10 is very, very important. Please make sure that you answer in a formal way. Please, no slang is allowed and no one-word answers because they become problematic and we can't exactly give you marks for that. Okay, and also look at how do we increase the depth of our response to suit cognitive levels? So as the questions are getting more difficult, how are you going in and how are you actually answering these questions? Remember, the higher the mark allocation, the more explanation is actually needed. Rebecca, are you ready
Fatima?
to take over?
Yeah, I can't see, but I've accessed the presentation on my phone, so I'll be able to carry on.
So we are on the breaking down of the question. You may
Yes,
carry
breaking
on.
down of the question, yes. Candidates, remember, every question, before you respond to it, you need to process it. You know, during oral moderation, I have discovered that there is a tendency amongst you to just respond without actually processing the question and knowing what information is required. You are not necessarily wrong in what you are answering in terms of information. However, that information is not directly responding to that question. So do this for yourselves. Follow these steps. 1, identify the action verb in that question. Know that you are asked to account, which is give a reason. You are asked to explain, which is just give a brief account of or an explanation, or you are asked to discuss. So know what you are expected to do. 2, what is the question limiting you to? Is it saying line 4? Is it saying paragraph 2? Highlight those areas for you so that you don't go overboard. If it says account for something that is in paragraph 3, you know you cannot talk about anything that is in paragraph 2. And what is the content being tested? I took examples of 2 questions from the June 2024, which is the current. It says in the comprehension, discuss the contrasting views presented by the writer in paragraph 3. Now, we are discussing, that is our action verb. So we know that we need to give more information, provide details, because it is a discussion. And it says, what are we discussing, which is the content being tested? Contrasting views. So contrasting views are being tested. And where am I finding those? Paragraph 3 only. So if you can follow those 3 steps for every question, you will always be succinct in what you are responding to. So please do that for yourselves. And there is another question, account And it says in paragraph 4, for the use of the rhetorical question. So there's always content being tested. So don't miss that content because your mark is on that content. The next slide, Fatima, types of questions. All right. In comprehension, we have 4 types of questions. And again, it is in your best interest to identify which type of question is this one. First, we have, thank you, Fatima, the slides are now showing the general type. And we took examples of the general type from past papers. If it says account for the writer's feelings, it's a general question. You are giving a reason for that. What point is the writer making with whatever? It will carry on and elaborate the content. That is a general question. So by breaking down these type of questions to you, it's so that when you are answering, you're able to identify which ones are your strong point. What is the writer stating about this? Explain what the writer states. That is also a general question. So know your general question from your vocabulary type of questions. Explain, you see, with vocabulary, it will then depend on your vocabulary knowledge. However, in English, we speak about contextualizing. If you do not know the meaning, you have no access to Google or dictionary in the exam room, you can contextualize. Look at what was said before the word and what is said after the word and try and make meaning of what the word could mean. That is contextualizing. And there will always be vocabulary questions. Look at those 3 papers. They all had vocabulary questions. Explain what the writer means by, and it was a vocabulary word. Explain your understanding of, it's a vocabulary word. Provide a definition of. So if your vocabulary is vast, then you just latch onto those vocabulary words, and those are your lower hanging fruit, and you can actually put the marks in the bag as you go along. Thank you, Fatima. Next slide. Right. Now, these ones, we're going to go into detail with the next 2 type of questions. All right. Colleagues, your mics, please. Okay, I've just unmuted myself. Your technical type of questions, candidates. This will go into detail with even with the next type. There's 4 types. For each, we have a phrase that is indicated and how you start by responding to those questions. Every time a writer uses statistics, if a question is focusing on statistics, that is style of the writer, and that is a technical question. So when you respond, you start with any of those ways. Possible responses is to add credibility, because when it's got stats, it is credible. To make it authentic and valid, sometimes, depending on the context, is to elicit an emotional response. Sometimes is to convince and manipulate or persuade. So look at the context, look at which word fits that context. However, statistics are used all the time to do all those bolded words in the possible responses. And the next technical question. All right. The next technical question will refer.
Rebecca, muted all. You can unmute.
Okay, I've unmuted. Thank you, Jenny. All right, I was saying with the, no, Fatima, I'm not done with the first one. I
Rebecca, you can unmute.
All right. This is how you start the response. However, you need
Okay, while Rebecca is coming back in, we're talking about the second question. She talks about
Fatima. Hello.
Hi, Rebecca, are you back?
You see, I've unmuted and then I'm muted again. I
Okay,
unmuted and
I've
unmuted.
requested Shadrach to come into. I've requested Shadrach to come into the meeting and to basically control those who can't.
Okay, thanks, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny.
All right. So, I was still talking about reference to grammar style and personal pronouns, that you start the responses with that. What we have on possible responses, it's how you begin your response. However, for full marks, you don't stop it there. You are going to have to bring it back to that current text to involve the reader with regards to whatever that is in the text, to provoke an emotional response on this particular aspect. So make sure that you have understood the comprehension for you to be able to continue with that. However, having started and having stated that will award you 1 mark. So you need all the marks that are allocated. So you need to add a little bit more. Thank you, Fatima. Next slide. Again, rhetorical question. You saw on the examples of the question I had, the use of rhetorical question is always there to provoke an emotional response with regards to, then you elaborate based on the facts of that particular text, and to encourage a response, or to encourage the reader to think on a response regarding. So make sure that when you say to convince, you don't just say to convince the reader and stop there. To convince the reader that this, that, and you continue with that. And that's why a rhetorical question is used, right? Short paragraph or single sentences paragraphs, we've had those. Sometimes you have a 1-word paragraph. It is always for effect in English. However, when you say to emphasize or highlight the point, what is the point? That is the next level of answering. Don't just say to highlight the point. Yes, it's to highlight a point, but each text will tell you what point is there to be highlighted. So put that one in as well, then you've got your 2 marks. If you say to highlight a point, you'll get 1 mark, right? And if it's impact, what impact is it expected to get? Use of figurative language, similes, and all that is also to emphasize. It's also to engage the reader. However, it's not complete. You need to carry on and give more. The comparative question now, this one gets its own attention because most learners are intimidated by the mark allocation and they do not respond to this one. We are going to break down this one for you because most of the marks are
Wait.
4 marks in total, right? So
Rebecca has just been muted. She'll be joining us shortly again. If we can just hang on for a sec, please.
Fatima, I was removed once again.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Can I carry on, Fatima? I am on the comparative question, which is the next slide. Next one, not backwards, forward. The comparative question.
Yes, it's showing right now.
All right. The comparative question counts for 5.7% of the entire paper, right? And it needs its special attention.
Oh, ma'am.
All right. Should I carry on, Fatima?
Yes, please.
All right. If you study previous year's papers, you will see that you may be expected to, with a comparative question, compare the entire text A to B, compare a certain number of paragraphs in text A to text B, or link the title to text B. Remember, candidates, text B may be a visual. However, it is not yet visual literacy. Therefore, we are testing comprehension even there. We are not testing body language and all the other things because it's not a cartoon. It's supposed to reinforce the ideas of question 1. So,
Ma'am.
let us carry on and talk about the techniques of how to respond to this question. There is just too much noise, Fatima. I can't carry on.
Yes. Ma'am, may you please end the call and fix the settings?
I'll carry on. We are on the answering techniques of the comparative question. And candidates, remember that the comparative question is based on both texts, right? So make sure that you always refer to both texts. You can't talk about one text and get full marks. So for you to ensure that you are referring to both, you use words like similarly. Text A say this and this, similarly with text B, whatever, and as in text B, this is happening. So make sure that you use those words to just guide yourself, to be comparing at all times. All right. And look for aspects that are common or that are opposing or that are alternative, you know, to text A and B, or where the question is directing you on text A. Look for those aspects because those will be your aspects of comparison. And only refer to part of the text
Rebecca, please unmute.
Okay, while Rebecca is unmuting, I'm going to carry on. It says, as she was saying, only refer to the parts of the text specified in. This is very important, guys. What we notice is you summarize the whole of text A and you summarize the whole of text B. Please look at what the question is asking you to do. So it says, example, to what extent does text B support the title and paragraph 1 of text A? So we're asking you to obviously summarize text B, then you're going to refer to the title, and then also paragraph 1 of text A. So you're not going to do the entire paragraph, but you are only going to do paragraph 1 of text A. And then you will do summary.
Fatima? Okay.
You can take over.
Okay, I don't know where you stopped.
I'm starting on comparison between text A and text B.
Okay. All right. I think we spoke about text B, title, and paragraph, that it has to touch on those 3 aspects for you to get full marks, right? Let us move on to
Okay, I'm going to carry on. It says, comparison between text A and text B questions. Refer to the specific paragraph in text A, like we said. Summarize the main.
Fatima,
Yes.
they're saying a bit slower from the comment
Okay.
box. If you
Sorry.
could go a little slower, thank
Sure,
you.
we will. Then it says, summarize the main idea or theme in the paragraph indicated in the question. So you're going to go to text A and look at the paragraph. So if it says paragraph 1, like we said, you are then going to summarize only the main idea of text A and that particular paragraph. So you're not going to do the entire passage. Then you're going to take this just of text B, keeping in mind the overall main idea of the passage. So you're going to look at text B as a whole and give us a little bit of a summary. That will give you 1 mark each. Then you are going to look for some. The link would then be between paragraph A, text A, whichever paragraph it is, and also text B. In most cases, remember, guys, there will be more similarities.
Please, to learn, please.
Please look for similarities, not differences. We are looking more or less for similarities. So like we will say again, you're going to look at summarizing the main points of that particular paragraph they've asked you. You're going to summarize text B. And then suddenly there's going to be, you're going to look for similarities of them both and expect. You're going to see how they are similar, and then you are going to identify the link between the two. What links these two particular things? What links the visual to that particular paragraph that the question has been linked, has been asked? Please go through your, Rebecca, I don't know if you're back. Please use the following. These terms are very important. Ambiguity. Remember, you must know that it means more than one meaning. One is more obvious, the other one is less obvious. Very important is contradiction. Ideas which oppose one another. We then have irony. Remember, ladies and gents? irony basically does not only come in paper 1, it is in paper 2 as well. So you must know what appears to be in contrast is actually what is saying in actual the case. We also have the paradox. Again, paradox comes in paragraph, paradox comes in paper 2 as well. So these are terms that don't only come in paper 1, but are also relevant for paper 2. It is also, or like we said here, it is the absurd or contradictory statement which proves to be true. So it seems absurd, but is in actual fact very, very true. Again, sarcasm, very important to note, paper 1. It is the use of irony as a ridicule to mock something. And irony is very important because we pick it up a lot in our cartoon. And then also the satire. It is used to ridicule or expose or criticize issues. Again, very important in terms of the comprehension as well as the cartoon. So ladies and gents, go back to these terminologies and study them and know them very well. Rebecca, are you back in? Okay, Rebecca will join us shortly. I'm going to carry on. So, when we talk about style in tone, remember, style in literature is the literary element that describes the way the author uses words. So there are certain words, diction, very important. When we talk about diction, it's a question that is often asked in the exam. What is the diction used? When we talk about what is the diction used, we're asking you to please choose particular words, not sentences. We're asking you to choose particular words, such as, if we're saying, what is the diction used in paragraph 3? You're going to have to then look for particular words that tell us the diction used is so and so, because the author is making a statement or the writer is making a statement. It is very important to understand style. It is imperative.
Sorry, Fatima, the slides are moving ahead of you on its own.
Okay, I'm only on slide 14 on my side.
It's just moving for us.
Okay, are we back on slide 14? Hello, Jenny, is it still moving?
No, it's on 20. It's on 21. It's going forward.
Okay, I don't know. Someone has taken control of that.
I've asked somebody technical to come into this meeting and take control, but it's now on 23.
Okay. It's on 14 on my side. Should I reload?
I think reload and go to the page, but I've requested IT unit to come in and take control of the meeting.
Okay.
She's never looking at abantu. Ngijongisa abantu.
You're on slide 7 now?
Yeah, I'm going to 14 now because that's where we stopped.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on 14 now.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, correct.
And so we're going on with regards to style. Style is important in informing the tone of the text. So when you look at the style, what type of writing is it? It is difficult for learners to understand this if they do not have a clear grasp of the concept of style of writing. So go back to your exact text and your comprehensions. Look at what is the style. You can't say it is a good style or a bad style. Ladies and gents, that's not what we're looking at. You need to look at the type of writing in order to assess what the tone of the passage is. Remember, tone is the author's attitude towards a subject. So sometimes when you're reading the comprehension, listen to it in your head and see how does it sound to you. Tone is the sound. So tone can be identified by looking at the word choices and phrases. Take time to look at the language. An author uses words to create meaning. So please take note of what this tone is. So when you're reading the text to yourself, as you're reading it, picture what the writer is saying in your head and how would it sound if he or she had said it aloud to you.
I share it, Joe, guys.
We're now looking at the mark allocation.
No, I'm not good. I'm pretending to listen here. I just put it on so that I can see.
So the mark allocation simply means I don't know. Ladies and gents,
Fatima, Srini will join the meeting and then he will sort it out. We'll have to reload in the meantime. And I don't know why schools shared it with learners individually.
I don't know why they gave it to the learners, because the learners were supposed to be in class doing it. It seems like in certain schools, they just gave the link to learners.
So I think we're not going to share tomorrow's links with the schools, Fatima.
We must share it with the principals. Because it, okay, so when we look at the mark allocation, ladies and gents, this is very important. So we look at the mark allocation. Please remember, when you love verbatim, that is word for word. It obviously means that you are only going to get a minimum amount of marks. If we look at the 3-mark question, please take note. A 3-mark question means you need to have 2 ideas very well discussed. So we're not asking you for 3 marks. We're asking you for 3 ideas to be well discussed. When you look at the 2-mark questions, ladies and gents, that's your first few orders of questions. Take note of this. We're not asking you for 2 ideas. We're asking you just for 1 idea, and you must discuss it in detail.
If you can, as a speaker, can you mute us all?
We did do that, and they just keep coming back on. This is not
And I don't know which school.
Okay, I'm going to carry on. When we look at the 2-mark questions, remember, a 2-mark question does not need you to have 2 ideas. It requires you to have 1 idea, and you must discuss it in detail. So take note of this, ladies and gents. These are the ones where you're going to score your marks. 3 marks, 2 ideas, very well discussed. 2 marks, 1 idea, very well discussed. Now, when it comes to the question on diction, you will not get a mark for just the identification of the diction. You will have to identify the diction and say how it relates to the passage. So remember, it is 2 marks for any 1 example of diction well discussed. So when the diction question comes, it will say, identify the diction in paragraph 3. For 1 mark, you will identify the diction, and the 2nd mark will be your explanation of why that particular diction was used. When we talk about the 3-mark question for diction, again, remember, you will have to give us 2 examples of diction. Now, remember, diction is a choice of words. Always remember that it is a choice of words. It is not phrases. It is not sentences. It is a choice of words. So you will choose 2 examples of this diction, and obviously it will be well discussed. And obviously your 3rd mark would come in from where you will discuss it. We're now going on to the summary, which will be section B. Ladies and gents, the summary is something very, very easy to get marks. This is your literal 10 marks in the bag before you even start writing your exam, because this particular section is the section that gives you the most marks. For instance, The steps in answering the summary is simple. Ladies and gents, please make sure you need to read your instructions
Slow down a
very.
little, Fatima, when you explain the
Sure.
summary.
I will do so. I don't know which school is that.
Until the end.
Someone.
Someone keeps removing it. I don't know which school it is, but it's a learner that is busy removing it.
It's not.
Okay, ladies and gents, as the thing is uploading, I'm going to speak about the steps for answering the summary. So basically, we're going to start with, please read the instruction very carefully when it comes to the summary. There is always a particular question that the summary requires you to summarize. It's not just summarize the entire paragraph. Please, ladies and gentlemen, look at that particular summary, and it's usually just at the beginning after the question where it says summarize the following passages in 90 words, and it tells you what you need to summarize. So our first instruction is to please summarize what the instruction is and focus specifically on what the question is asking you to do. Secondly, next, take a highlighter, take a different color pen and scan the passage to understand the content, keeping in mind what was the question asking you to do. Start with paragraph 1. Read the first sentence with concentration. Check the sentence against the specific focus of the instruction. So you go back. What is the question asking me to do? Now also take note, it does not mean that every first line is going to be the answer. You need to read the entire paragraph, and somewhere along the line, it could be in the third sentence of the first paragraph that is what the question is asking you to summarize. If the sentence is a relevant point, shorten the sentence. Now, ladies and gents, the trick of a summary is not to rewrite it in your entire own words. Remove a word, put in a word, take a full stop and change it to a comma, as long as the meaning of the sentence does not change. So you just remove the unnecessary detail, leave out the figurative language, leave out the unnecessary statistics, use a short sentence. So instead of example, teenagers usually diet to maintain attractive figures. You can change the word teenagers to children or youngsters or young people. Usually get diet to maintain attractive figures just by changing that one word, but you're still keeping the meaning of the sentence. You will be allocated that particular mark. Read the next sentence and check if it's against the specific focus. Again, if it is not relevant, leave it out. So always go back to what your question is asking you to do. Ensure that you have reached the stipulated word count. Ladies and gents, if there's any time that we look at word count, at least in the summary, please do not go over the 90 word count that is given to you in the summary. When you have written out your 7 ideas, and sometimes you will see you have more than 7 ideas, write it down. It does not mean you must only have 7 ideas. Allow yourself to give 8 ideas as well, but as long as it's within the 90 words. Count the number of words and use it to write the paragraph. We do not ask you to write point form. Point form is for you to do as a rough, but the marks are allocated in the paragraph. So for example, if we look at a past paper, we're looking at March 2015, it says, Carefully read text C below. It is an article on the role that parents can play in preparing their children for the 21st century. You are required to do the following. Use the information below to write a summary of how children should be prepared for the 21st century. So can you see where your specific focus needs to be? You must literally summarize how children should be prepared for the 21st century. So when you are looking in your summary, those are the points that you are going to look for. How should children be prepared for the 21st century? And those are the 8 points that you are going to take out of your summary. The question says you must write a fluent paragraph using your own words, and we have explained to you, change a word, leave out a word, as long as the content does not change. Remember, your paragraph should include 7 points. I've also told you, you are allowed to add in an 8th point as long as you do not exceed the 90-word count. You don't need to give a title, and you must indicate your word count at the end of the summary. When we look at the summary quick wins, avoid the repetition of points. Do not repeat the point in different ways and say the same thing. Remember that it is not necessary in an examination to rephrase the entire passage into your own words. So just maybe change 1 or 2 words. That's what we are saying to you. All you need to do is make a slight alteration to your sentence or to the passage to score a minimum of 7 out of 10. Always make sure you use single words with a synonym. Remove a word from the original sentence, or you can add in a word. This is what I'm saying to you. And you can change the tense of the sentence, and you can change the order of the sentence, as long as you don't change the meaning of the sentence. That is the most important thing. You will still get the box. And now I'm going to hand over to Ayanda to carry on with advertisements.
You must unmute Fatima.
Shedrick needs to unmute her, Jenny, because I'm not in control.
Okay, Srini, you in the meeting, or Shadrick, please unmute Fatima.
Not me, it's Ayanda Khadebe.
Oh, it's Ayanda Hadebe.
It's better a squad grow, you know, when we start a squad just get bigger and bigger.
Okay. While Ayanda is busy coming on, I'm going to start off with the typical. I think she should be in again. So with regards to the advert, ladies and gents, Ayanda, are you in the meeting? Ayanda, have you been? Okay, I'm going to carry on while Ayanda comes into the meeting. So it states, Jenny, will you be able to just get someone to unmute her, please? So it says, our typical type of exam questions, remember the advert changes, but the questions do not change, or the questions are similar when they are being asked. So questions like, state what the advertiser is in promoting and giving a reason for your answer. So again, when we look at a particular question like that, it's a 2-mark question. We are asking you to identify firstly the product, the service, or the idea, and then you need to give a reason for your answer. So when they say state what the advertiser is promoting, you need to identify what is this product. Is it a cleaning material? Is it a particular service? Is it a bank? What is it? What is the service they are providing? And what is the reason that you are saying so? It says then explain how the graphic supports the message of the advertiser, or is the visual suitable for this? Again, substantiate your response or discuss how the written text reinforces the illustration of the advert. So focus on both the image. The image is what you can see. Okay, so what is it? And the text. And it's
Hi, Fatima.
Oh, are you in? I've started
Yes.
on number 1. You can take over from number 2.
Okay, thank you very much. We are looking at questions 3 and 4, the visual literacy questions. Yes, we have started with our advertisement questions. Like Fatima has mentioned, if you are able to identify the product or service that is being advertised, if it's neither of the two, then you should be able to see that this advertisement's purpose is to create awareness. It can be on a social issue, it can be on a political issue, but these are the main things you need to identify first when you get an advertisement. When we look at the second question, explain how the graphic supports the message of the advertiser. When we look at graphic visual image, we are looking at the picture, the illustration. And now you need to make sure that you focus on the image that is given, and you need to establish now how the image and the text reinforce the idea behind the advertisement. We need to look for specific words or phrases in the text for us to make that link, for us to make that connection. And we need to explain these and show how they are related to specific details in the image. The next slide, please. Another question that is sometimes challenging to our learners would be the question on techniques. Usually the question comes like this: what 2 techniques are used to persuade the target market to buy the product? Or study the language in the text and discuss how the advertiser succeeds in persuading the target audience to buy the product. Now, what kind of responses are we expecting from this one? You need to identify any 2 ways used by the advertiser to attract the target audience, to entice the target audience to buy the product being advertised. Now, your response should be posed like this. If, let's say, you identify emotive language as one of the techniques, you will state emotive language, and now you need to quote what words or phrases give us that, and then explain the effectiveness of using that. So if it's not emotive language used, it can be any of the other techniques like well-chosen adjectives. If there is any repetition, you'll have to be able to identify that and explain the effectiveness of the repetition. If it's a rhetorical question being used, any other catchphrases, even the font of the advertisement can tell us something about the technique and its effectiveness in the advertisement. Another question that you may expect would be the intention. What is the advertiser's intention in referring to? It depends on what the question is saying. Now, whatever opinion you will express here, as far as intention is concerned, should be supported by evidence from the advertisement. What clues are we given in the advertisement to tell us this, to give us this opinion? Now, when you approach any questions on visual literacy, it's not enough to just give us an explanation. You'll have to tell us what is it in the advertisement that gives that tells us that. You'll have to describe what you see in the advertisement, identify it, and then explain how it has been used. Another common question would be the one on comment on the effectiveness of. They can ask comment on the effectiveness of the slogan or the headline. Now, this one, the possible response would be a slogan serves the purpose of emphasizing a point. Like Rebecca mentioned, you don't just say a point, you need to mention, or you need to be more detailed in explaining what point then is being emphasized. Now, in the slogan as well, you can check if there is any repetition or any rhyming words, any catchy phrases. Even the font size can be part of your response, your comment on any of these, and then you state what the advertiser is emphasizing and why. Another question that you can expect in advertisements would be to analyze the visual image and the written text. Analyzing the visual image and the written text. Critically discuss whether the text and the image successfully convey the advertiser's message. That is one of the most common questions, where you'll have to link the visual message, the visual image to the written text, and link these in conveying the message of the advertiser. Now, an expected response to this question would be where we are expecting a critical response, where you identify the message first. What is the message of the cartoon? And then you state what extent the text and the image assist in conveying that message. The next question would be, a possible question would be, what is the implication of the headline? Again, here, you're expected to state what you understand from the headline used by the advertiser. And then you draw conclusions based on what is being given. What does the advertiser imply then by this headline? Another question would be to comment on the repetition of. It depends on the advertisement, because repetition, remember, can be used as one of the advertising techniques. Now, you need to be able to identify that repetition, remembering that this is a technical question. The advertiser has used this, and for what purpose? So you state the point that the advertiser is emphasizing and how this helps to achieve in selling the product or the service being advertised. More on the typical exam questions. Comment on the appropriateness of the image in the context of the advertisement as a whole. Again, there's the image. If you are referred to the visual image, please make sure that your responses are directed, at the visual image. If the question is asking you to refer to the written text, then please make sure that you refer to the written text when you respond. So a critical response is required in this type of a question. You focus on what you see in the image and what is said in the text. What you see would be the image, the visual clues, or the visual text, and what is being said in the text would be the verbal or the written text. Now, are the two related in any way? If so, to what extent? And then you would have to explain how the two support the overall message of the advertisement. That is, if they do. Now, the last question here, possible question. If you do get two texts on advertising, let's say two advertisements, then you may get a comparative question where you are asked to comment on the differences between the two texts in the ways in which they present
Sorry,
whatever.
Okay, it's on. It was off. Thank you.
Okay. I'm looking at a possible question where you are, let's say in the paper, you are given two advertisements, you are given two texts, and then you are asked to comment on the differences between the two texts in how they present whatever the message is to the target audience, which one is more effective. Now you are comparing between two advertisements here, which have something in common. Therefore, you are required to focus on the ways in which the two advertisers use different techniques, maybe, to present what they have in common. So here, you will have to identify what is common and different as far as techniques are concerned, and then you discuss how these techniques then have been used to relay the message of the advertisement. In this case, a layered response is required. meaning you'll have to address the different aspects of the question. And please make sure that you address all aspects, that there is nothing missing. Definitely, if you've got two advertisements, let's say, you'll have to mention something from one advertisement and the other. Tell us what is similar, tell us what is different, and then what is it that brings these two advertisements together, since they may be advertising the same product or something similar. What you have on the visual here is an example of an advertisement that came out in last year's paper and the June exam paper. And the areas of focus here would be, we need to remember to identify the logo. We should be able to identify the logo in an advertisement. We should be able to identify the slogan in an advertisement. We should be able to describe the image that we see and be able to explain what it might mean, what it might imply. So the message or the intention that needs to be taught using all of that. Also, the usage of an advertising technique is a commonly asked question. You should be able to identify those techniques that have been used in advertising. And after identifying them, you explain and then you link them to the purpose of the advertisement. We know that when you are being taught advertising, you are told about the AIDA principle. Nowhere are you going to be asked what the AIDA principle stands for and what it means. No, but we are looking at its application, how it has been applied in the advertisement that you are given. Remember, in the advertising question, there will be 2 marks that are language related. There are 2 questions or 2 marks that will be relating to grammar, to language. I am now going to move on to cartoons. Remember, I said questions 3 and 4. Questions 3 and 4 are visual literacy questions. So
Okay, I think Ayanda has gotten muted again. We're looking at the cartoon terminology. I'm going to look at, as soon as she comes back on, she'll take over. Ladies and gents, this is the terminology that you need to know. You need to know what a caricature is. You need to know the intention of the cartoon. You need to know the difference between a speech bubble and a thought bubble, because it appears differently on the cartoon. You must know what a caption is, and you must know what a comic strip is. Ladies and gents, you must also know what a frame is, because it refers sometimes
Fatima,
to... Are you back?
I'm back. Yes, I'm back on.
Terminology, and I stopped at frames.
Thank you. We need to be familiar with all this terminology so that you use it correctly. For instance, some learners tend to refer to the characters in the cartoon as the cartoon itself. So please make sure that you are familiar with all of this. We have to continue the movement, speedy action, punctuation, stereotypes, verbal clues, visual metaphor, irony, parody, satire. We need to be familiar with all this terminology so that we know what the question is expecting from us. Now, when analyzing a cartoon, we need to look at the following aspects. When the question is referring us to any action that is taking place in the cartoon, like what is happening in the cartoon, how is the action portrayed, we need to know that we are expected to identify something in the cartoon that is telling us about some action. It can be lines that are drawn on the cartoon to show that there's a quick movement. So you need to be able to identify all of this. Here's the characters here. When we look at the characters in the cartoon, who are the people in the cartoon or portrayed in the cartoon? What emotions are they communicating through their facial expressions? In this case, you'll have to describe what you see, then you explain what actions and emotions are communicated through the body language. So it's not only the facial expressions, but also the body language. It can also be the gestures that the characters are making. But now you describe what you see and then you explain what it could mean. Language, when it comes to language, what words have been used, and how the punctuation has been used in the cartoon to suggest emotion. We should be able to identify all of these. And now remember, these can also help us determine the attitude of the character in the cartoon. The setting is also important. Make sure that you are able to identify where this cartoon is set, where is it taking place, when is it taking place, and what clues are we given, what makes us say that, to say that this is where it's taking place and this is the time or the period. So this sets the, a specific context. This gives us a specific context when it comes to us understanding the message of the cartoon. Questions on stereotypes or symbols, we should be able to identify these if there are any. In a cartoon, has the cartoonist made use of stereotypes? You won't be asked to give us the meaning of the word stereotype, but how the cartoonist has used stereotypes or a stereotype in the cartoon. So you need to explain that. So your understanding of a stereotype being an overgeneralized belief about a particular category of people, for example, all teenagers are rebels, is important. Then you explain how that is portrayed in the cartoon. Has the cartoonist used any symbols to represent something else? You should be able to identify all of these. Again, make sure you describe what you see and then you explain. The speech bubbles are important. These are easily identifiable because they look like bubbles, and then they've got the spoken words inside. Now, when asked to refer to the diction or the text, the language or words in the cartoon, this is where we need to look. You look at the words that have been spoken by the character. Now, a lack of speech bubbles, especially in a comic strip where people are interacting or having a conversation, can be used to convey a specific message, or it can be a cartoon character's
Okay.
I'm unmuted.
back?
I'm unmuted
Okay,
again.
thank
Yes.
you.
I'm looking at the speech bubble, or the lack, sorry, of a speech bubble, where the character is shown not to have anything. It might be a change in attitude. It might be the character reacting to someone or something that is happening in the cartoon. We should be able to explain all of this and then state what is it in the cartoon that makes us say that. Thought bubbles, these are usually in the shape of a cloud and contain words that are not spoken, but rather these are the thoughts that the character has. Then the presence of thought bubbles can indicate or show a number of things. What the character is thinking about himself or other characters. It can be showing their feelings towards something or their attitude towards something. Now, this could be an exclamation, on an exclamation mark. This could be a secret comment. Now, a character may be annoyed, for example, with their classmates, but will not voice their irritation. Now, it stays in their thought bubbles because they're not voicing it out, as this will lead to more maybe unnecessary conflict. So that can be portrayed in the form of a speech bubble. Now, the speech bubble could also show the thought process behind what has been said, a reaction to what has been said, and maybe, again, the character is not voicing that reaction, but they are showing it, or it's shown in the form of a thought bubble. The thoughts, for example, of a child before asking their parent for money. We are also looking at the facial expressions here. We have to be very specific when we describe the facial expressions, and of course, explain what they could mean in the context of the cartoon. For instance, we need to be careful that we are not confusing facial expression with body language. Facial expressions, for examples, would be sort of what they could possibly refer to in the context of the cartoon. It can be raised eyebrows that can maybe denote shock or enthusiasm or an interest in something. Furrowed eyebrows can be showing skepticism maybe, or concentration or frustration. So there are a number of ways of describing a facial expression. A frown, then you explain what it might mean. It might mean, the character is confused or sad. A smile, what does it mean? It might mean that the character is happy about something. The character is interested in something, that would be the protruding or enlarged eyes. Rolled eyes may show annoyance or it depends on the context of the cartoon. Now, when analyzing cartoons and referring to the techniques used by the cartoonist, we need to look at the following elements. A smirk, what it might mean, the slumped posture when it comes to body language, the head or the body turning away. We need to be able to be specific when we describe what we see and what it could mean in the context of the cartoon. It can be, the head buried hands. Maybe the character is overwhelmed by something or frustrated. The outstretched arms can be for exaggeration or to emphasize a point, or maybe just a resigned attitude. So we have a number of ways of looking at the gestures, the facial expressions, and the body language. But make sure that you describe what you see, what the character is doing, and then you explain what it means in the context of the cartoon. I've mentioned movements. How do we see that there's movement in a cartoon, in a frame? It can be lines that are drawn that may show movement. We need to look at, let's say, words that are used. It can be sound words, your onomatopoeia, words like pow, bang, boom, slurp. So we need to be able to identify all of these techniques used by the cartoonist, in order to convey the message. Now, here's another question that tends to confuse learners. The one about humor, how humor is created in the cartoon. How humor is created in the cartoon, how the humor is humorous. We are looking, how the cartoon is humorous. We should be able to identify humor or any of the following to create humor in a cartoon. It can be irony, it can be satire, it can be puns that are used or a pun that is used, it can be a stereotype, it can be ambiguity. These are some of the ways how humor is created in a cartoon. So what you do is you identify what the cartoonist has used, and then you explain. If, let's say, you identify that irony has been used in the cartoon, then you'll have to explain what makes the cartoon ironic. If it's a 3-mark question, they won't tell you how humor is created, but you will have to identify, say, irony has been used. That could be 1 mark, and then the other 2 marks can be you explaining what makes the cartoon ironic. Examples of the cartoonist's messages can be a criticism of human nature. It can be to highlight the unfairness of something. It can be to make people question something, to provoke a response. So you'll have to understand what the message, what the purpose of the cartoon is. Fatima, I think I've covered both the advertisement and the cartoon questions.
Okay, when it comes to the textual editing, ladies and gents, what we're going to ask you to do is that we are not going to go into the textual editing, because textual editing basically is your parts of speech, your pronouns, your verbs, your adjectives, your malapropism. So we're asking you, in order to master this section, which is question 5, please go back 5 years and revise your question 5. So we've told you from June 2022, November 2022, June 2023, November 2023, June 2024, and go through all those question 5s and practice them, because question 5 is a textual editing question. It requires you to practice. This is an application skill. We can't tell you. You need to be able to identify the adverb. You must be able to identify the parts of speech, the malapropism. So the only way you can do this is to practice question 5 every single day and using past papers. And we've told you to go back 5 years. We're now going to touch on a little bit of the creative writing, which will be then now presented by the chief marker, which is Ayanda Khadebe.
Thank you, Fatima. Paper 3. Now we need to remember this about paper 3. Anyone can write. It is an accessible paper. You should have something to write about. You should have something, a topic that you can relate to in the paper. So this paper is usually basically a lifeline to candidates. This is the paper that saves, some learners from failing English home language. So we need to take it seriously. Now, when we look at the marks, it is out of 100. It weighs more than the other papers. It counts for more than the other papers, the other 2 papers. And, numbers do not lie, as you will see on the next slide. When I say this is out of 100, the paper 3 is out of 100, it counts for 40% of your mark, of your exams. Now, I would like us to look at the breakdown of the marks in section A. In section A, remember, this is your essay, where you are expected to choose one essay to write on, one topic. The breakdown out of 50 is this. Your content mark is out of 30. That already is a lot, because that is 60% of that question 1. And the language mark is out of 15, which is 30%. And then the structure is 5 marks, which is 10%. Now, just because your essay will be will have paragraphs, it does not mean you are going to automatically get 5 out of 5. You still need to plan your essay very well so that you structure your response very well. Now, what we have here is these are topics that we got from the most recent national paper, the June exam that was written this year. Now, here are some of the topics on section A. Look at this, the Song of the Dawn. If you look at the first topic, what do you do with that? If you are attracted to that topic, if you understand the topic, what are you looking for? How are you going to plan your response? Break it down and highlight the key words in a topic. Highlight the keywords, and then when you are planning, you make sure that you address all those different keywords so that you address all aspects of the question or the topic. When you look at 1.2, ethical leadership is underrated. You need to make sure that you understand the topic in its entirety. You can't just take one aspect of the topic. Let's say you talk about leadership, and then your entire essay is on leadership. You need to address the different aspects of the topic. When you look at 1.3, for instance, if I've seen further than others, it was by standing on the shoulders of giants. Again, when you get a topic like that, if it appeals to you because you understand it, then plan your response. And how do you plan your response? Highlight the key words, so that in your response you address those. Because when we are marking, we are looking at whether you've answered the question. Just because you have written an essay, it doesn't mean you have addressed the topic that has been asked. I will look at 1.4. The best kind of gift is one given in secret. Again, look at the different words that are key in you making sure that you address the topic in its entirety. If you look at the word best, what does that mean to you? If you look at the word gift, what does that mean? And then secret, what does this imply? Does it mean it's negative? Does it have negative or positive connotations? We need to look at that. Remember, when it comes to creative writing with essays, you can answer in any genre. It depends on, how you interpret the topic. As long as there is a direct link to the topic or the visual you have chosen. These are the examples of the 3 visuals that came out in the most recent national paper. The first one, where you've got the robots that are writing, drawing, and reading, and then you've got all the humans portrayed there on their cell phones. That is portraying something that is actually happening in real life. So if you're able to relate to that visual, then your response in the form of an essay should tell us what is happening there. That does not mean you describe the visual, but if you're inspired by the visual, then you can write a figurative essay. It can be a metaphorical essay, but it should be inspired by the visual. So when I read your essay, I should be able to see the picture. I should be able to see the visual that you have chosen. If you look at the second one, it's a palm, then open hand, a palm of the hand with the question mark. And again, what does it mean? If you can't understand what that means, if you can't relate to that, then there is no way for you to choose that, because you won't do justice to the topic or to the visual that you have chosen. So you need to look at what is it that you see. If you're able to understand the visual, then try and come up with a creative response that addresses that.
Chadian,
I'm going to move on to section B. Section B, remember, that is your transactional writing. You will have to choose 2 transactional texts here. And you need to make sure that you learn the different formats. Go back and learn the different formats, but don't just learn them. You need to make sure that you practice different topics where you apply those formats. I'll give you one example. In last year's final exam, there was a topic on home affairs, the frustrations that people, go through at home affairs. You see, that is a relatable topic. Most learners, I'm sure, could understand the different frustrations that are happening at home affairs. But now the question was asking the candidates to address those in the form of a formal report. Now, a formal report is different from a formal letter. Those are 2 different texts. Because in transactional writing, you are writing for a purpose. So if it's supposed to be a report, then you're supposed to write using that format. As a result, a lot of candidates did not do so well there because they used the incorrect format. So please make sure you go back and study and revise the formats so that you are able to answer correctly. Remember, again, when choosing topics, the 2 questions in section B, be careful that you don't just see dialogue and then you say, I'm going to choose a dialogue. Look at the question. Look at whether you are able to understand the question, because some learners tend to make the mistake of choosing the question and not look at the topic. You look at formal letter. It says formal letter, you just write a formal letter without looking at what the topic is saying, what the topic is expecting you to address. So you need to be careful there. So learn the different formats and practice the different styles in each format. Now, the different formats that you need to make sure that you practice, I'm sure you're familiar with these, the different formal letters, whether it's a letter of complaint, whether it's a letter to the editor. The email has been in the past exam papers, informal letter, the review, a dialogue, the speech, newspaper article or a magazine article, formal report I've mentioned, the obituary, the CV and covering letter. There's also the agenda and minutes of a meeting. Please make sure you are familiar with these different formats. Here are just a few examples of the questions that came out in the most recent national paper. Again, look at the email question. I'm just going to show you how to approach a question like that. If you know the format of an email and then you look at that question and you feel like you can answer on it, but how are you going to pose your response then? You are a resident of a housing complex which has limited parking spaces. That is the context. You are given a context there. More often than not, visitors park their vehicles in residents' parking bays. This has led to heated arguments. There's the problem. You are given a context. Now, what do you do with that? You need to write an email. We're going to write this email to the manager of the complex, the housing complex, about this ongoing situation. If you look at this, I've highlighted the key words so that in your response, you make sure that you mention, you address all these that have been highlighted. So you are writing from the point of view of a resident who feels that there is a problem here when it comes to parking bays. Maybe you feel there are not enough parking bays, but you see this problem arising when there are visitors. Visitors will be people who are not staying at the same complex. And now they park illegally, or they park in parking bays that belong to the residents of the complex. So that is causing a number of arguments, heated arguments. Now you need to write to the manager complaining about the situation. But now, that doesn't mean just because you've addressed all of those, that's going to give you a very good mark. What if maybe in a question like that, you even come up with suggestions? You know, there's a problem. So maybe there are possible suggestions that you have, possible solutions to this problem that you are raising. That is also acceptable. A film review, a light-hearted film was recently released. The film generated excited conversations across the country. Now you highlight the keywords, a light-hearted film. So whatever review you're going to write, make sure that there's an element of it being light-hearted, fun, entertaining. And then this film generated excited conversations. Here, you need to know the format of a review. What does a review need to have? What should be there in a review for it to be a review? Because you are writing for a purpose. So make sure that in giving the review, you give us just a brief, a brief summary of what the movie is about. Now, you can give us everything about the film review, but if there's no title of the movie or the film that you watched, then that movie or, that movie review is not going to be effective, because here you need to make sure that you achieve the purpose of a review. So you can tell people about this light-hearted film that you watched and, how exciting it was. But if it doesn't have all the different details we need on a review, like the title, for instance, who the main actors are, what genre it is, and so on, then it doesn't really serve the purpose of a review. The formal letter is in this time of great economic hardship, there are many people experiencing shortages of basic necessities. That is the context you are being given. You need to write a formal letter, but what are you going to say? Write a letter to the mayor. So you need to make sure that you address it correctly. You address it to the mayor of your town, in which you provide suggestions. You see, there's another key point you need to address in your response. Provide suggestions. You are given the problem on how to alleviate the situation of for the affected communities. Now, if you don't tell us what the different challenges that the people are facing, you need to be more specific here. Some learners tend to give us vague responses, but now we need detail. We need some detail, and providing detail doesn't mean you're going to give us a very long and winded response. No, but when you give us a detail, who is being affected? Who are these people who are experiencing hardship in the community? What group of people? It can be the elderly, it can be the youth and unemployment, all of those things. And what is it that they're experiencing? It says shortages of basic necessities. Mention the examples of basic necessities here. Don't just assume that we know what you're talking about when we are marking. We don't know unless you state that. Now, when we look at transactional writing, how do we mark? It's out of 25. Each piece is out of 25. The breakdown is like this. 15 marks goes to the content and format. That is 60%. That is why I said make sure you study the format correct, carefully, so that you give us the correct format. And then the content would be your response, you answering the question, and how much of that response you have given us, the detail. And then the other mark, which is 10 marks, would be for you now how you've presented your response. We look at the language. The language here includes the tone of your response, the register, formal or informal, the style, does it serve the purpose of an obituary? The purpose, does it serve the purpose of whatever you've chosen to do? Is it addressing the correct audience? So we look at, we look at all of these when we are marking, not just whether you've spelled correctly or you've punctuated correctly, but we look at whether the text serves the purpose. I think that wraps up the presentation, Fatima. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. From our side, we'd just like to say, firstly, thank you to the Chief Director that made himself available. Thank you to Jenny, that was part of the entire team and obviously helped us through this this process. Please understand, and we ask you from our side to say sorry for any interruptions that took place. Please understand that we are 4 districts trying to put together, and it's so many learners in so many schools, so there were a bit of interruptions, and we on our side say sorry for the shortcomings. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you to the teachers that had control over the learners, and for those of you that took the time to be with your learners and obviously spend the entire afternoon with them. We will share the link of paper 2 for tomorrow, but it will be shared tomorrow morning. The presentation will be sent to schools to share with their learners and to go over it with their learners. Please don't just share the presentation with your learners. We are asking you to take this presentation back to your classes and please go through it with your learners again. If you require any of your SESs, your subject advisors, to come to your schools to do the presentation with them, please feel free to contact any one of us and we will gladly come and do the presentation with your learners again. Have a lovely afternoon and God bless. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Where can we reach you?
See you tomorrow. That's the start.
No, don't worry. So, yeah. You know, this is because one does not have time. It's in order. We'll see you tomorrow.